this is a list for those of you who are a dungeon master, DM, for a D&D group or a role-playing game. And maybe you've been doing it for a little while and you want to get more into it. You want to buy some things to make the game better, the game experience better. What should you buy? What should you get? What really matters for a normal player like us? Mm-hmm. Well, we've been playing now for several years.
Yeah, 4 years.
I bought some things that were good and some things that aren't. So I'm here to share the things that I think you need to make your D&D game experience better. I'm not going to fool around. I'm not going to wait for the best for last. I'm just going to do the number one thing that everyone should have for their D&D game.
Ooh, what is it?
You need to buy a Chessex Battlemats. Buy any brand you want. But you want to buy a map that you can lay out on your table that's either like vinyl or something that you can use the wet erase markers on. Mm-hmm. Now you need to use, not dry.
You will be sad.
Yes. Now you could take a whiteboard and do a whiteboard, but you want the grid pattern to be on there. Mm-hmm. And the reason why wet is better than dry, well, first off, for the vinyls, if you use the dry, it soaks in. It's like a solvent, and it
stains
soaks in.
it. Yeah.
Stains it. You can't. And the wet, because it's more, I guess I'm assuming because it's water-based, it sits on top of it, and when it dries, but it's great because you can prepare it ahead of time. Mm-hmm. When you have time to do a map.
It doesn't wipe off if someone
just accidentally touches it.
Yeah.
Right. You need water. So it's great because that allows you to do it ahead of time. You can do both sides. These things are double-sided, so you can do one side and then flip it over so people don't know that you have like this crazy thing planned. I do that a lot.
Yeah.
And when the first few times I did it, my players were like, "What? We were playing on this all the time. You mean right underneath it there was something?"
And the thing is, like for me, I need the visuals to understand the aspect ratio of everything, like where my guy is. Like, oh, of course, logistically, it doesn't make sense for me to attack now because I'm not close enough.
Right.
I really need that visual aid of the map.
And we've done sessions where we did the mind's eye thing, where you don't have a map, and sometimes that's okay. But I've kind of come to the conclusion, because I wasn't a big fan of doing the map all the time because it was more work as the DM to do it.
Yeah.
But I've come to the conclusion, you've convinced me that you just need to have the map. It just allows people to be more creative.
It makes
because
more of a
you
game
get a
because
structure
you can
to
play
be creative
it.
one. Yeah. So it's definitely something you should invest in because they're not terribly expensive and it'll make your game a lot better.
They're super durable too. It's not like something that you're gonna need to buy another one or another one unless you're using
magic markers or something. If you have a player map, what are you gonna need to put on that player map? Besides the wet erase markers, you're gonna need minis. No, okay. There's a lot of people out there that just buy minis, and they have these videos, and they have minis behind them, and minis in front of them, miniatures, you know. And I do not subscribe to that. I don't have very many.
Actually, I've been playing, like we said, for about 4 years, and this is the first year I bought a mini for a character that I'm playing consecutive sessions with. So I really wasn't into it either. I'm like, I don't need a mini. I was just using pieces from games or whatnot, but it's so personal when you have your person on the mat. If you're just getting into it, don't pour money into minis and tons of dice. This is my advice, because you don't know if you're really gonna like it. But once you invest some time and you know, like, you like the play of the game, D&D, go for it then, because it's worth it to have those personal touches.
And as a DM, from a DM standpoint, Dungeon Master standpoint, let the players buy their characters, and they can just buy, like, there's a lot of good miniatures that are just $5. You get two, the ones that are branded from D&D, you get two, they're $5. There's other third-party companies that make a bunch of different options, so you can spend $20 or you can spend $3. Let them do that. But for the DM, you don't need to buy miniatures for every monster. In fact, I think that's something you shouldn't do when you're just getting into it, because Well, first of all, it's expensive.
Yeah.
And secondly, if they're not painted,
they don't look.
that much. Yeah. And if you really like painting, that's a different story. But if you don't, then like me, I'm not that into painting. Then it's another chore you have to do to get ready for the session. Right? So, but almost everyone has a chessboard laying around, a chess set. So I will use chess pieces for the bad guys. And because most people understand basically like basic chess, if you use the pawns for the weak guys and use the king for the strong guy, it gives enough visualization to be like, oh, that's the big baddie, and these are like his.
And they fit inside the grids typically, unless you have a
very elaborate
chess set.
Yeah. The squares on the Chessex board are about the same size as a chess board.
Yeah.
So go that route first. Or steal miniatures from board games you might have laying around or something.
We've used miniatures from Blood Rage, from Lord of the Rings Risk, and from Journeys through Middle-earth. They have really great miniatures.
Cartagena.
Don't let those miniatures just sit there.
Stop! Wait. Make sure you watch the end of this video, because I have bought things that I thought would be awesome, and I spent a ton of money on it, and then they weren't so great. So don't make the same mistake I did. Make sure you watch the end. Something else that I thought that when we first started playing, I would have these players who thought, I'll just have my phone on me. It's going to be great. I have my character sheet, digital character sheet right there. I have my player's handbook PDF right there. Stop! That's ridiculousness. You need paper. You need paper. And I don't care how technologically advanced you are or what you think you got going, but nothing annoys me more when someone comes to the table and they don't have a player sheet paper. In fact, at this point, I won't even play it anymore. Look, I've tried it. We've had tablets. We have laptops that have touch screens. It seems great. It seems perfect. It's more environmentally friendly. But no, because the laptop goes to sleep and you got to wake it up and you got to enter your code. And then D&D's played over many hours. Even a short session's going to be 2 hours long. All right. So most devices these days, people, unless you have a brand new something, it's not going to last super long. It's annoying. It's scrolling. It tilts the wrong way because you lay it down and you got to pick it back up. Just get paper for your player sheet. Do you agree with me?
Yes, and I have a recommendation. Keep your player sheet in a clear sleeve and use dry erase markers on your sleeve to
or wet erase.
To wet. I meant wet erase.
Yeah.
Wet erase.
Either one will work, but wet erase doesn't smear as easily.
Yeah, and keep track of your health that way, so you're not constantly erasing and like boring holes into your character sheet.
Yeah.
It works great. I always have a ton of clear sheets here for everyone that plays with us. So
yeah, and a quick search online, you can find character sheets that are made up specifically for certain characters.
Those are
I forget the website right now, but maybe we can put a link.
We'll put a link, yeah.
I end up printing up a sheet of all the combat rules and a bunch of other finicky rules that are hard to find in the book because they don't just have them in one spot. They're kind of like over here and over there. And I just type them up on one sheet of paper that I keep in the binder I have. So if someone has, if someone gets frightened and they say, well, what's the difference between frightened and being paralyzed? I can just flip one and I can be like, okay, these are the two different things. Or a level of exhaustion, because you don't use them very often. But when you need them, you kind of feel like you need them. Because especially when
you can't go on without
knowing. So, and trying to look the stuff up in the book can be a pain in the butt, especially if you have access to a printer and a computer. Like, just write up this, and this could be on like your phone or something, because you don't need to reference it all the time, but you want all these rules condensed in a way that you can understand and in one place. So I've done that. It's worth the time. One more thing that I think everyone should do as a DM, this will make your game so much better, and it doesn't have to be expensive, and that's props. Props. Okay? Paper props. Immersive things.
Yeah.
If an NPC is going to send a player a letter, write that letter out and just hand it to them. Don't tell them what the letter is, just
really
hand it to
good
them.
That. Yeah.
It makes the game so much better, and if you have old office supplies laying around, it's super cheap to do. Right?
Yeah.
And if you don't, like, You know what would be awesome? If you took some bark off a tree and scribbled a note on that. Like, that's even better. Like
a message from a fairy.
Right. Like
that.
Just use what you have. You don't feel like you have to spend a ton of money to do this unless you want to. But when I give players, now my players they start expecting the stuff. So.
We're a little spoiled.
Right. But I mean, like, whatever you can do to try to bring people into the world makes an crazy amount of difference. I remember John had DM'd a session, and it was the first session. We didn't know how it was going to start. We didn't talk about how it was going to start. And we started out blindfolded. And I was like, this is scary. And she started talking as one of the NPCs. She didn't tell us what was going on. We had no idea. And we were told to eat something, and we ate it, and it was a pickle, right? And here we were at a pickle contest to see who would make the best pickles.
Yes.
And we were the judges of the pickle contest. It was some fair in a place, and it was brilliant because you think it's gonna be some like we're kidnapped and we're in a cave
and you can't get away.
No, and it wasn't that at all. It was the best. It was still the best start of any session or any campaign that I've ever done, and it was immersive. It was like just a little bit to get you into the world and get you role playing a little bit, and so not that you have to do the pickle tasting all the time, but someone will be in battle, and we had a big battle on top of a city, and a cleric came by, sort of supporting everyone on this, and they just came by real quickly to help the people at this part of the wall. And I just handed out everyone shots of something, some type of alcohol mixture that people wouldn't recognize. And they had to drink it real quick, and that was their health potion.
Really fun,
right?
Yeah.
It's just a fun thing to do. But especially, that's something that everyone can do, is if you have letters to give to people, write it out, give it to them. The benefit of that is, if you make a copy for yourself, or you just remember what you gave them, you can reference the letter without saying exactly what's in the letter that you want them to see. And it forces them to take it back out. Or if they've lost it, because they're careless players, I've had these players too, who lose everything you give to them, you can say, well, if you don't have the letter, I'm sorry, you must have got lost in your travels. And so it creates another problem for them to have to solve.
Yeah.
And it just adds to the immersion. So,
yeah. I always appreciate that about your sessions. You put a lot of like love and artistic talent into it, and it just makes it feel so personal to your character. It makes you feel like this is me. Like I have to bring it now because he's treating me like I'm a real character. So it's really cool. And it kind of gives you a little backstory. It gives you something to bounce off of. And when you're first starting out, you don't really know how to role play. You're not a professional actor. You don't know how to do this. It really helps when your DM is like, here, this is a letter from your father. Like, oh, I have a father. Like, it's really awesome.
So are there anything that I've missed that you love to have in your sessions?
Oh, you're putting me on the spot now.
All right.
Like when you give us specific swords, or were you going to talk about that?
I wasn't.
Items.
No.
He makes up items, and they're often illustrated, and they are very specific to what we've done. And the abilities are often like, sometimes they make sense for our character, and that's really cool too. I love those things, because that kind of, when it's like in The Hobbit when Bilbo had Sting, like that was his weapon that he had a story with, and when your character gets a weapon like that, it really like makes you feel like you have a history.
Yeah.
So I love those.
Those are a little more time, and I homebrew a lot of those items. So if you're not doing homebrew items, you're just picking items out of a book or random items, then players might be able to reference that more. But it is a fun thing to do. I feel like players treasure the item more when it's something there.
Like I got a necklace that gave me like 2+ charisma, and I gave it to like the orc in our campaign to wear to like try and like convince someone to tell him something. It was just very comical.
We go on?
Yeah.
I don't think we can do it unless you can give us a like. Then we can do it. So here are some things that I thought I needed, and I spent, often at times I spent money on it, and it ended up not being worth it. If you ever watch a D&D session, something that's iconic, you'll see all the time, is a screen between the DM and the players. Mm-hmm. It's so the DM can keep things secret. They can do dice rolls, right? I thought I needed one. I had one for many sessions until I finally decided I didn't like it anymore. It got in the way of that Chessex set that I mentioned. The board, the vinyl battle mat, the battle mat, whatever you're using. You have to always reach over top of it. And what are you trying to keep secret? Let's be honest, a lot of DMs are trying to keep the dice rolls secret. If you have to lie about dice rolls, then you're doing it wrong. And I don't care what anyone says, you're doing it wrong. All right?
You tell them.
There are a lot of people that are much more into D&D than I am who will fib dice, right? And I was not always against it either.
Either to make it easier for their character or easier for them.
To sort of give plot armor.
Yeah.
Right?
So it goes the way he wants.
Right. And it's not always to make it harder for players. Oftentimes DMs do it to actually make it easier for players. DM screen, it's purely optional. But you might not believe that if you see all the videos of people DMing, because almost everyone has a screen.
You mean
do away with the screen. Because there's not, it takes up a lot of room. I find that it takes up a lot of room. Now, some people like them because they have a list of rules on the back that you can reference. But I find that not that helpful, especially because I have a little cheat sheet anyways.
And you keep all your info in like a book, right? So you can
little binder, free ring binder. And you might find it useful. I'm not saying that the screens are evil and anyone that uses it is doing it wrong, but I just found that it took up a lot of space. It blocks a lot of the visuals that's happening on the table, especially during combat, that I just eliminated it, and I don't think I'm going to go back. If you're new to DMing and you have to fib on a couple dice rolls, I don't want you to feel bad about doing it. But when you do it more often, you learn the tricks that you don't have to do that. So I think, especially if you're new and you already have one, like they might be a really useful tool. Yeah. I was tempted to buy a fancy screen several times, and I'm glad I didn't because I don't use one now, and that would have just been a waste of money. Something I spent a lot of money on and a lot of thought and a lot of time was metal coins. Mm-hmm. I love the metal coins. I mean, I got some really nice ones.
You got really cool
And we had 5 players, and I said, well, I'm going to need so many gold pieces of 5 denominations, 10 denominations. And we have 5 players, so I have to get so many for each one. So I was mathing it all out to figure out what I needed. And I bought everything, and I had everything we need. And then none of the players used them, or used them very rarely.
The issue I had with it is that it was hard to keep track of what you had. It was really hard to keep track of what you had, and also felt limiting because I'm like, well, what if we find a real treasure? You're not gonna give us all the coins for the real treasure. Like the amount of treasure that we get. But it was. No, but the amount of treasure that you were gonna give us that we get now in like the town.
I have 5,000. I have like 5,000 denominations. So I have a coin that's 5,000 silver.
Cumbersome.
Right.
It's so cumbersome.
So this is why
you lose one or
this is why that was gonna be the fun part. If you guys had coins.
When we would like buy stuff, we'd be like, we just write it on our sheet and we'd be like, I don't know what.
Didn't work out as well.
We wanted it to be really cool, but it was like...
I wanted it to be really cool. Some of the other players thought it was neat, but then a lot of the other players were like, I don't want to have to do math.
Yeah. It was probably me, mostly, but...
But you weren't the only one who was not as enthused about it.
And it just... There's something about it that, like, if you're going to immerse me with something from the world, like, I don't want it to be the money and the math. Like, bring something else alive. Like when you bring the drinks in, I'm like, that's fun.
Yeah, so maybe skip the metal coins. I have a whole pile of coins now that I spent a lot of money on that we don't use for anything. My last one here something I said you needed, but now I'm going to say you don't need, and that's minis. All right.
Oh.
I'm kind of reiterating the point here.
I'm confused.
But you don't need to go out and buy all specific minis for specific monsters. If you have 5 kobolds in a battle, you don't need to go out and make sure you have bought 5 kobolds. The problem is they take forever to paint. They take up a lot of space. They're expensive, right? And every time you'll find yourself, because I found myself doing this even when I didn't have many minis, it's like, oh, I want them to fight this monster, but I don't have that mini. What other monster can I substitute in this spot, right? So you compromise the story to fit the minis you have. Now, there are a ton of people out there that like minis for minis' sake, and they like painting. And if you're one of those people, I am not discouraging you doing this, all right? If you're kind of on the fence about it and you're like, I don't know if I should do this, then just don't, all right? Go raid your kids' toy chest and get like toy cowboys.
Dinosaurs work great.
Dinosaurs work great
for monsters.
Raid your other games. Use mini substitutes. If you're into origami, just make it out of paper. There are.
That's too hard. It better be in the new session. The giant penguin waddled towards the heroes.
Be creative with the minis. Be creative with what's on the board. Because you don't. Yeah, it's cool. But I don't think it's, unless you're into it and that's like your thing, besides the point, whether you're going to use them or not, then I wouldn't bother. Go spend your money on other things.
I have a little piece of advice.
Yeah.
Like after you've gotten into the hobby a little bit and like you're really enjoying it, buy as many dice as you want. It's because all dice are different. They're kind of like snowflakes. Some roll really great and some don't.
Not really.
Some make you feel lucky and some don't. And I know Daniel's not like, he's like, oh, luck is so dun. But there's some sets that I have where I always use a 20 and I always use like the different sizes for different things. But I would say, like, you don't have to buy a set of dice that's super expensive. Like, it's more fun to have a variety that are a little different. And spend less on those than I spent a lot of money on a set of dice recently and I haven't used them at all because I don't like how the D20 rolls and because it hasn't gotten anything higher than like a 10.
She only rolled it a couple times. This little girl is so superstitious.
I don't like it.
Very superstitious.
And I'm so frustrated because now I've been shopping on Etsy for dice. I'm like, I can't spend money on dice for like another 2 years because I spent all this money on my expensive ones. And I'm like...
I just realized I missed a point about things that you should get that are useful.
Oh.
And I was going to say dice.
Yeah.
I was going to say dice.
Yeah.
As a DM, you need lots of D20s. Because you don't want to sit there and have to re-roll 2 D20s for all the monsters. Get a handful. What I like to do is I like to look ahead at time and see what weapons my monsters are going to be using. If they're all using D8s, I just set up all the D20s with their matching D8. You set them all up, and you can grab all those dice and chuck them down, and then you know which D20s go with which D8s because they match. Your players feel like you're being fair about it, and then you can get you can go through. You can have 5 monsters take their turns in quicker than it will take one of your players to look up that silly spell that they want to use, and you can go through things much quicker. So that's very helpful. Now it can be expensive, so buy them as you accumulate, but don't feel bad about buying lots of dice if you're the DM especially, because you will need lots of them.
And even for players, sometimes you'll have advantage and disadvantage, and it speeds it up if you roll your 2 attack rolls at the same time.
Does it also speed up when you roll all your dice at the same time?
I find that it reduces the luck, so I always roll them separately. But the D20...
So see how superstitious she is? She's like, she's not this way in normal life, which is why I'm so taken aback when she's over there rolling 1 damage dice at a time. Like, roll them all at the same time, lady.
No, they affect each other too much.
Though that's my 2 cents about DMing. Tell me how I'm wrong. Tell me if you agree with me, or what are your suggestions?
I thought it was very good. Very good advice for DMs.
Yeah.
And players too.
I'm glad you approve. Can I post it on your channel now, too?
Okay. As long as I get to do the thumbnail.